The mainstream media often paints Serbs as defiant. However, what if Serbia's stance was actually a direct response to Western policies? And that's something we're going to talk about today in the video when it comes to the Black Agenda report that was released in January 25th of 2025. And it's going to talk about the sanctions that have currently been placed on Serbia's Nice company, which is a petroleum company. And the reason that, there's a ideology that Serbs actually dislike the West. But, there's a lot of historical significance as to why Serbia has the stance it does. And, we're going to get into some of this as I read the article. So let's dive into this today. Now, this article by Black Agenda Report is called Imperialist Terrorism and Accumulation Through Sanctions, the Case of Serbia. One thing we need to understand is that the Black Agenda Report is actually owned by the United States. However, the individual who writes this article, I believe, is a Serbian individual. So let's get into this article right now. The mainstream media often claims that Serbs are religious ethno-non-nationalists who are blindly siding with Russia because of the Eastern Orthodox heritage, while a big majority of Serbs share that heritage. Purely religious analysis only feeds secretism and obfuscates anti-imperialist analysis. According to one poll, Serbian people have 41% negative attitude towards EU, 29% positive, and the rest are neutral. 51% negative attitudes towards the US, 21 positive, and 74% negative attitude towards NATO, 7% positive. No amount of religiosity can produce such anti-imperialistic figures. It is the experience of Serbians with demonized in a form of phobia, starvation, and deindustrialization via sanctions, as well as occupation of its sovereign territory by the means of direct military intervention that are the primary causes of this anti-West sentiment. And what I'm going to talk about is that it's not just about the current sanctions that Serbia is being, put under due to the Russian ownership of Nice. Serbia has been pushed into this position for decades. First off, we're going to talk about the 1999 NATO bombing, how it's violated international law, and Serbia has never forgotten this aggression. There are still many bridges, there are still many buildings that are sitting destroyed as a reminder of what was done by NATO. And so when you see that there is only a 7% positive attitude towards NATO, you can understand why, because it was not just 1 or 2 days, it was weeks of bombing. And I know people that experienced that bombing and they've told me stories, and it's ingrained in their head, and they still to this day have nightmares over it. So it's still very fresh in their minds, even though it's been 20 plus years since it's actually happened. Now, if you're going to want to read more about this this article, I will leave a link in the description of this video. But moving on from this article, Serbia, when it was part of Yugoslavia, was heavily bombed by NATO following an intense funding and arming campaign by the right-wing secessionists who sought to break away from Belgrade, which is the capital of Serbia now, but also was the capital of Yugoslavia back then, which led to a decade of infighting and expanding presence of NATO in the Western Balkans. A bombing that was propagandistically presented as purely humanitarian intervention. That bombing campaign did not just attack military targets. In fact, the country's economic capacity was initially destroyed through sanctions. That were followed by an unprecedented bombing campaign with the objective to demolish, destroy, devastate, and degrade, and ultimately eliminate the essential infrastructure of what was known as Yugoslavia. And so, like I said, this was not just military bases. This was actually citizens that were bombed here in Serbia. This was a way to destroy what was formerly Yugoslavia, to divide and conquer, should I say, and to install the NATO base that they have in Kosovo. And so I'd like to introduce the hypocrisy of the United States recognizing Kosovo as an independent state, but also condemning territorial disputes elsewhere, which you hear quite often these days when it comes to the two main countries you hear in the news these days. And one of the laws is the UN recognition 1244, which guaranteed that Kosovo was a part of Serbia, and yet the U.S. is ignoring that resolution. And so what's funny is that the U.S. likes to, throw its weight around and say, hey, this is what we look as right, but you're going to have to follow laws when it benefits us. But when it benefits other countries, we don't have to worry about that. We're not going to have to do what is right and what we agreed to. We're just kind of have to listen to what we're doing. And this is one of the big reasons you hear about the issues between Serbia and Kosovo, is because what the United States did. Moving forward in this article, Serbia was seeking foreign investments to fix its destroyed oil industry, and so it decided to sell shares of what used to be a fully publicly owned company. Nice is the one we're talking about here, to a partner that did not participate in the bombing campaign. And so Russia in 2008 decided that they're going to make an agreement to be part of this ownership. And so they made an agreement with their Russian counterparts, who provides the country with stable and relatively cheap energy resources and services. Russia took the strategic opportunity to continue with the currently under construction South Stream, which is a pipeline and that goes through many countries. And it also helps to serve Serbia also. So after reading this section of the video, you can see how the West completely crippled Serbia economically. And so the IMF and the World Bank privatization efforts were brought in, benefiting foreign investments over the Serbian people. There's companies that were sold to foreign interests, Western-backed austerity policies, and this is why we needed alternative trade partners like Russia and China still being one of the main players here in Serbia as foreign investments, not to mention that we're now looking at having foreign investments through Egypt. We're looking at Dubai, United Emirates, a number of other countries that are actually helping out Serbia in building everything. And Serbia has come a long way from what happened in 1999 and other years that I'm not talking about here as well. And on the final part of this article that I want to talk about, this is just another episode in the series of imperialist terrorism. If a country is independent in forging its own national and foreign policies, then its sovereignty must be undermined, first through propaganda and demonization, which justifies the second sanctions and coercive economic measures that often leads to the materialistic form of imperialist terrorism that destroys lives and develops countries, only for them to be brought off with the price of pittance by the imperialists. Serbia's experienced all of this over the span of the last 30 years, but the war criminals are knocking on Serbia's doors again. This time they target Serbia's livelihood and energy security with the goal of causing a strategic defeat of Russia. However, one has to bear in mind that the red lines of Serbian government towards Russia Serbia on the other hand, and the collective West on the other are a reflection not of the desires and objections of Serbian elites, but of often resentment of Serbian people towards imperialistic policies that led to the humiliation and the destruction of the society that give them pride and emancipation. So as Serbia is a neutral country, we should be able to strategically decide who we want to make friends, who we want to bring in as partners, who we want to do business with. However, when it comes to the West, they don't believe that a sovereign country should be sovereign, and they want to come in and do what, when they bombed in 1999, they didn't go through any UN approvals. They did this outside, breaking the law. That's why we have such resentment against the West here. And given everything that Serbia has endured, why should it align with the very forces that cause its suffering is my main question. Why is it that the West seems that like they have the right to tell other countries what they need to do? And this is something that many people in the West do not understand, is that this is not all done in Serbia through corrective policies, through corrective measures. This is all done through brute force, propaganda. I've seen firsthand before I flew out to Serbia, and other people that I've spoken to that have come to Serbia. In the airports in these Western countries, it says, do not fly to country due to increased crime, due to increased, petty thefts or robberies or assaults, whatever it might be. But then they finally get here and be like, listen, what we were taught in media, on social media, on news networks, they were actually wrong. It was not actually it's not actually like they make it seem to be here in Serbia. And that's why I tell people that if you want to move to Serbia, if you want to find a new country to live in, come and visit Serbia first and see what it's all about. Experience the people, experience the culture, experience the landscape that is Serbia, and you might make yourself get yourself surprised and think, hey, listen, this is the right place for me to move, just like we've helped many of our clients. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.